It is good to see everybody here tonight. I've already been mocked for having a microphone. Apparently some people think I'm kind of loud anyway. I don't need one. So it's for you. My name is Tom McCracken, and I am the senior pastor here at Community Church. I'm also an educator. I've held a Virginia teaching license. I have taught in Salem, and I have taught in Roanoke. I'm currently an adjunct professor at Virginia Western. I'm also a PhD candidate, and my concentration is educational administration. So bullying is certainly an issue that's very important to me professionally and vocationally, but it's also an issue that's important to me personally. When I was a young child, I was strung up about 6 foot high on a tennis court fence. My pants were yanked down to my ankles. I was given the biggest wedgie you can imagine and tied up there and left there until my mom got home from school. In addition, as a parent, I have 4 children. We got a call from a school one day that they had to restrain my child. And so we went out to where my son was at school, and we found that administration and teachers had tied him to a chair with T-shirts and rope. So this is something I'm very familiar with, very close to this topic, and so I'm just very glad that you are here tonight. I think we would all agree with the immortal words of the psalmist when he declared that children are an heritage unto the Lord, that the fruit of the womb is a reward, that children are a gift from God. And I think that's why we're so passionate about this. I want to recognize some special guests that have taken their time to be with us tonight. Tracy Foster, is she here tonight? Tracy Foster, yes she is, from Straight Street. She's on ground level of some of what's going on. We have 2 American Sign Language interpreters, Drew Wright and Nancy Martin, that are both here with us, so we certainly appreciate them being here. We have Joe Pilatus. Where is he? Met him earlier. Joe and his wife have developed a Facebook page that I will let you all know about later on that hopefully will help all of us through this issue. I'm actually a co-administrator on that, and I'm very excited about that initiative. We have Pastor Jim Asbury. Where is he? Pastor Jim Asbury. There he is. How could I miss you? Pastor Jim is a founding pastor of Exalted Church and a chaplain with the Roanoke City Police Department. So it is great to have you with us here tonight. Speaking of police, we have the Roanoke County Chief of Police, Howard Hall, with us today. Thank you so much. He's the guy that said I was so loud I didn't need a microphone. We have Roanoke County Sheriff's Department represented tonight with Brent Hudson and Steve. Where are they? Brent and Steve, where are you guys? They are. Additionally, Brent is a former school resource officer, so he, again, being at the ground level of this thing. So glad that he is here tonight. We also have Delegate Greg Habib that is with us tonight. It is so good to have you with us tonight. From Salem City Schools, we have Dr. Mike Chiglinski. I knew I'd get that right. Chiglinski, Dr. Mike Chiglinski. He made me say that 3 times before I passed, and I stand up and just blow it. It is so good to have you here. And also Curtis Hicks, who is the Associate Superintendent of Salem City Schools. Where is he? All right. Thank you for being here tonight. We also have Brian Keeley. Did I pronounce that right? It is so good to have you with us tonight as well. Is there anybody from Roanoke City Schools here representing tonight? How about Roanoke County Schools here tonight? Anybody representing either one? All right. Let me just sort of lay some ground rules out this evening. Obviously, let's be civil and respectful. There is certainly a potential for the tragic irony as children and youth are watching how we are dealing with bullying, so let's make sure that we handle it in an appropriate, productive manner. I'm not asking you to bridle your passion or hide your hurting. I'm just asking that we focus on addressing issues instead of attacking individuals. We're all here voluntarily, I hope, because we see a problem and we endeavor to be a part of that solution. Our children, I believe, need us at this very crucial hour. They need us to be protective, and they need us to be proactive. And I think that's what we are doing here tonight. We also need to have patience in understanding bullying is not a new phenomenon. Bullying has been around for a long time. In fact, back in the 1800s, there was a documented case where a young child was bullied to the point that they thought the only alternative was to commit suicide. And so they hung themselves all the way back in the 1800s. So this is an issue that has been going on for a very long time. So I hope that none of us are naive enough to think that one community meeting is going to solve all of our problems and stomp out bullying. That being said, I believe that we can affect change, implement policy, and create an eventual culture that has absolutely zero tolerance for bullying in our public schools for future generations. We're going to have a time for questions and answers tonight, and we're going to end promptly at 8 o'clock tonight. And if we all agree before we leave that there is a need to follow up, plan, prepare our next move, then I just want you to know that I am committed for the long haul in this and would be open to representing and reporting back to this group. So at this time, I'd like to open us up in a word of prayer, if you would join me. Father, we thank you for this opportunity we have to come together. All the way back with Moses, you made it very clear that you hear us when we cry, you see us through our afflictions, you know us, and you are able to move and to redeem your people by way of outstretched hand and your power motivated by your love. So, Lord, I just ask tonight that as we come together, you give us the wisdom and discernment we need to make the decisions that need to be made, that we could truly affect change, that our children's children will not face the issues that our children are currently facing. In the name of Jesus we pray, amen. Let me just throw some statistics out at you before we continue. As many as 30% of students report being bullied. 30%. As many as 70% of students in schools today have seen bullying and have witnessed some form of bullying. And yet only 36% of students that have been bullied ever report it at all. School-based initiatives bring bullying down by at least 25%, provided these initiatives are purposeful, intentional, and more importantly, that they are ongoing. Oftentimes in our schools, we address issues that come to light, and once they are in light and we have policy created, sometimes out of sight, out of mind, years later, we move on. So initiatives that work, that change, that do things are initiatives that are not only intentional and purposeful, but they are ongoing, a continual review of policy. 160,000 students, according to the Department of Justice, miss school every single day for fear of bullying. I believe that the safety and security of our children should not be confined or limited to a certain district or a certain school that they go to, but I am under conviction tonight that grandparent, parent, guardian, when your child is picked up, from the time they're picked up to the time they're dropped off, you ought to have some element of comfort knowing that your child is safe. Zero tolerance. I want to play two quick clips. One is a clip, news story that came out not too long ago. It was an 8-year-old that had so much pressure and bullying that they killed themselves. So I wanted to play that first. Jerry, if we could let that roll.
8-year-old Gabe Taye killed himself less than 4 months ago. His mother, Cornelia Reynolds, spoke with WLWT days after his death and questioned if school leaders were taking action to prevent bullying.
I just feel like enough is not being done, and I feel like stuff is being swept under the rug.
The family's attorney says the video is proof that Gabe was bullied at Carson Elementary just 2 days before his death. Jennifer Branch says during her investigation, she obtained the video of Gabe being attacked by another student in the boys' bathroom at Carson.
A boy is in the bathroom punching and threatening and assaulting other children, and the son of my client walks in. He actually attempts to shake this assailant's hand, and the assailant pulls him forward and slams him into the wall, and he is knocked unconscious for 7.5 minutes.
WLWTs have requested a copy of the video from the school. We've also attempted to contact Cincinnati Public School administrators. They were unavailable late in the day as word of this video began to break. But in January, leaders at Carson Elementary told us there was no evidence of bullying. Branch says Gabe lost consciousness in the bathroom incident and says a school official told Gabe's mother that her son had fainted.
There is concern that there was more violence going on in that school. There was more bullying than Mom ever knew, was ever told. And as we learn things, it's been hard to share them with her because her response is, if I had only known.
Obviously, that didn't happen in our valley, but obviously we are all aware that it does happen in our valley. There are things like this that are happening. Bullying is certainly something. And when there is an issue for me as a community leader, and I see it as an issue, and I see families that are struggling and going through what they're going through, to have people in influential positions sweep it under the rug, as this mom said, that really irritates me. And so, again, tonight, as we come together, I hope that we can divert what upsets us and our passions and our desire to protect and be proactive for our children and be productive with that. Because I really believe with the systems and structures in place, with the right group of people, we could certainly affect change. Secondly, the second clip I want to play is more personal. Her name is Caitlin Fisher, and she is from the Valley. She graduated a few years ago. She endured bullying all through school. She, in her perspective, went to the appropriate channels, asked for help, and she felt more like she was the perpetrator instead of being the victim. And she got to the point that she felt that, in her own words to me, that there was no other alternative, no other option than to kill myself, so she attempted suicide. This is her clip. Caitlin Fisher.
Hi, my name is Caitlin Fisher. I'm a 2008 high school graduate and a victim of bullying. Growing up, I was bullied for being a slow learner. Then, in the spring of 2008, things took a turn for the worse. I was cyberbullied and made to feel like it was my fault and nothing could be done since it happened off of school property. In that same time frame, I found foul and untrue things written about me on the back of a toilet paper holder, such as I had AIDS, I had an abortion, and one other thing that was written. A victim should not be blamed for how they react in a certain situation. If they bring a situation to an adult out of concern, then the adult should help them instead of blame them. If the situation is something that is out of the adult's hand, such as cyberbullying, for example, then they need to refer the student to someone who can help them so the student feels safe and doesn't feel like they have to resort to violence or suicide to solve the problem.
That took a lot of courage for somebody local to let their story be known. But it also obviously identifies again and reiterates we have a problem. Bullying is an issue. Before we get into questions and answers, I want to define bullying. We struggle with defining bullying. And, let me just say, I don't think it's short-term teasing, picking, arguing, or fighting. Otherwise, my wife would be a bully. What it is, and the Center for Disease Control finally in 2014 came out with a definition. So in part, I will read that definition to you, and I think it's fairly accurate. And I quote, "The core elements of the definition include unwanted aggressive behavior, observed or perceived power imbalance, and repetition of behaviors or high likelihood of repetition," unquote. That is bullying. Let me also say that today is different than when I was a kid. Bullying is a completely different animal today than when I was a kid. Even though I was strung up on a fence and exposed and kids were laughing as they walked away and cars were driving by, honking and laughing. As soon as I got home, I was safe. I had a place that I could be. I had my friends that I could be around that didn't know about that. I certainly didn't tell them about that. And in school, I was separated with my own peer group. So I had places that I could go where it wasn't intrusive. There were safe places that I could fall. That is not the case with our children today. Our children cannot get away. There's no place to escape. Their phone is always ringing, "I don't like you." Their computers are always blinking. Here's that embarrassing picture that I have shared with everyone. They can't go home. They can't go to school. It is everywhere around them, and it is affecting them to a degree and putting more stress on them that I didn't have at my age, and I'm sure many of you didn't have at yours. Different today because of a cultural shift sparked by technological advances. One of the things that I want us to hear tonight that I'm excited about is this Facebook page that has been created. It is called the Anti-Bully Alliance page, the Anti-Bully Alliance page. We're already up to about 200 members. I anticipate it growing. Our vision and our goal for this page, Mr. Pilatus, if you want to chime in, where are you? Help me. If you want to chime in at any time. One of the goals of this page is for it to be a one-stop shop, a resource for all of us to be able to go to, where we can find out, irregardless of what school district we're in, different research that is out there, the different resources that are available. We hope it'll be a help to you and a tool. So make sure when you leave here today or where you are now that you track down on Facebook the Anti-Bullying Alliance page. Secondly, one of the things that I uncovered during research, and I would love for us to address collectively as a group, and let me just say, well done tonight showing up. Your attendance tonight has certainly shown that there's a lot of people that are passionate about this. It has brought attention. We have every media outlet here tonight. That's phenomenal. That's bringing attention and awareness, bringing this issue to light where we can deal with it and start to affect some change. One of the things that I uncovered at my research was shocking to me. What I discovered through research is that 50% of bullying cases would cease forever if there was peer intervention. 50% of bullying cases would stop if somebody would step up and report it, would be a hero. Instead of having people standing around videotaping, taking pictures, and passing it on. That's a problem. And I can't walk away from a statistic that says half of all bullying cases would end tonight if we could just get their peers to have the courage and be empowered enough to stand up and make a difference in someone's life. So I would hope that maybe we can talk about policy later on, have discussions with school boards later on, with legislators later on as we try to develop policy. Another thing, again, is awareness and attention. We absolutely cannot let this go. We have come together. I hope we can stay together, and I hope we can see this thing through. I think we can do a lot through legislation and lobbying. Let me say there is no federal anti-bullying law in place in our country. That was shocking to me. In Virginia, there is no, according to my research, district policy review. There's no district policy components that include written policies on reporting, investigation, and written records. What was shocking to me as I reviewed all the policies, and I have every single one of them, my office has so many papers. It's great because when my wife comes in, it actually looks like I'm working. So I'm excited about that. But papers everywhere. I have pulled up policies locally and all over America in different school districts. And while I believe we're doing very well at identifying bullying as an issue by incorporating that into our policy, we're not going as far as we need to go. And we're not bridging the technological gap and addressing the issue as much as we could with cyberbullying and incorporating social media in that as well. But the other issue for me is there is no policy in Virginia that covers follow-up and follow-through. This was important to me. Many school districts have policy in place that if it's reported, an investigation form is filled out. That's great. But there's nothing written, no policy out there that I can find that deals with follow-up and follow-through. Let me just say, as you are, I'm sure, aware, children that are on the victim end of bullying, even though it might be investigated and stopped momentarily, how about having some policy that would follow up with these kids a week, a month, 6 months, a year later to find out, is it still going on? How are you doing? I think that is absolutely crucial, and I think it will make a difference. I know I'm a veteran, 14 years in the service, and I go to the Veterans Care Center. Every time I go to the Virginia Veterans Care, not the Virginia Veterans Care Center, that's the retirement place, right? The Veterans Hospital. Every time I go to the Veterans Hospital, even if it's for a blood pressure check or dealing with what I'm there for, they ask those same questions. How are you doing mentally? Are you wanting to hurt anybody? Do you have any feelings that you want to hurt anybody? And every time I tell them the same thing. I'm a pastor, of course I'm going to answer yes to that. But again, the issue is, let's look at the mental health piece of this. The mental health and the stability of the victim, and even the mental health and stability of those that are bullying. You know, I think it's important that we have consequences for the bullies. There needs to be consequences. There needs to be a zero tolerance for anybody that rises up with a power difference and intimidates and harasses anyone. Zero tolerance. But even my short stint on the Roanoke County School Board, I can tell you there needs to be follow-up and follow-through with them as well, finding out why they are doing what they're doing, trying to stop it at a young age. By the time they get to high school, most of the time it's too late. Most of the bullying instances happen in elementary and middle school. That is a young enough age where hopefully we can catch that bully, that aggressive person, and start to direct them and re-guide them, retrain them, educate them, and get them the help they need so they won't hurt anybody else. Lastly, and I'm almost done, and it'll give us about 40 minutes of questions and answers, so that'll be good. Again, I want to activate the structures and the services that are already in place. I don't have the time, nor do you, nor do we need to complicate the situation by reinventing the wheel and recreating new organizations for the sake of creating new organizations. We have some great things in place right now. One of them are the school boards. In fact, we have the vice chair of the Salem City School Boards here, and I very much applaud you for representing the city of Salem. God bless you for doing that. The school board's primary function, appointed or elected, is policy. It's policy. To create policy, to amend policy, to update policy, to keep it current. I would really think that it would behoove us to plead with our school boards to review the policies that are in place now. I pulled a lot of these up, again, from all over our country. And unfortunately, some are as old as 15 years, some are as old as 7 years, and that's locally. There are some policies addressing bullying that are 7 years since the last time they were reviewed. I think we can do better than that. I think we need to continually review them, amend them, so that we can stay current on things like technology and cultural shifts and society problems. So I think school boards need to be engaged. I think we need to engage our school boards, go through the proper channels, and make sure we say collectively, we want our policies reviewed. We want them renewed. We also have superintendents of schools that are in place. Their job is to enforce the policy coming out of the school board. I think for me, let's make sure that they are implementing those policies, new, current, amended, and increased training initiatives that take a holistic approach at including everyone that will rub shoulders with our children during the course of an educational day. I know as an educator, we focus on the administration and we focus on the teachers. I think we need to incorporate, not every district does, everybody. Let's make sure bus drivers are perfectly equipped with the resources they need. There is a lot going on those school buses. Always has been, and it's time with the technology we have available, the resources we have available, and the attention to this issue that we can look to those school buses and get a better hold of what's going on in those seats as they get to and from school. Cafeterias have always been stressful for children. Raise your hand if you've ever had to sit alone in a cafeteria. Well, I'm glad. I was going to wait to see if there was enough. I didn't want to be the only one. It's an awkward moment. That is sort of, that time that it's open game, right? You're sort of more out of the sight of teachers. You're not really under the eyes of as many people, and that's where peer pressure comes in. and isolation, being alone, all those things are exaggerated in the cafeteria. So again, as we're dealing with bus drivers, let's make sure our nutritional workers have their radar on and know exactly what to look for and what the procedures are to report. I think janitors, anybody that's around our children needs to have the same information, the same power to be enabled and empowered to make a difference no matter where they are, in classroom management, on the bus, in the cafeteria, in the hallways, in the bathrooms, in the playground, everywhere. Lastly, I think there ought to be some training with parents. I think there ought to be some training with the parents. I think parents of bullies need to know what the expectation and consequences are. And, because I got to be honest, I'm a parent of 4 children. Believe it or not, my children are not perfect. I know looking at me you might think different, but they're not perfect. And so I think as a parent, if I have a child that is bullying and engaged in some inappropriate behavior, hopefully I want to know about that behavior so that I can use the resources available to me to guide that child in a better position, to better that child. So I think training for parents with bullies, not only here's the help available to you, but also here's the consequences that we have if your child is engaged in such an activity. Again, zero tolerance. But I also think parents of the victims need to have some connection. I am hearing as a community leader over and over, time and time again, from parents of children that are being bullied, we don't know where to go to. We don't know what resources they are. We don't know the policies. They're ambiguous. They're shaded. In some cases, they're not written. They're unspoken. And there is a disparity between one school and another, even in the same district. I think we need to be on the same page across the board. So I think training needs to happen. Lastly, I would encourage you not to leave tonight empty-handed, but hopefully that we would all agree as a unified collective that we will take the steps needed, do the due diligence, do the research, stand up and make sure that we can affect much-needed change to this issue. Again, I'm willing to do whatever we can do. I'm in it for the long haul. You know where I am, completely accessible, so I'm excited, ready to invest and do whatever we need to do, but don't lose the power that we have as a collective unit here. At this time, I'd like to open up for questions. We do not have Roanoke County and we do not have Roanoke City represented. We do have Salem represented. We have law enforcement represented. And so if you have any questions at all about policy with Roanoke County or Roanoke City, I will stay after and I will direct you and make sure that we take care of that. If you have any questions for the folks that are here tonight, again, we have Straight Street, we have some legislators here tonight, we have law enforcement, and we have 2 people representing the city of Salem. What I'll do is you raise your hand, I'll have you stand up, say it, I'll repeat the question, and then we'll try to find the best person to answer that question for you. Yes, ma'am. Good question. Where are you? Salem, Roanoke County, Roanoke City? It doesn't matter. Salem? Roanoke City, okay. All right, so here's the question. Are classrooms allowed to have, and do they have, cameras, video recording devices in the classroom? So if you would field that for Salem, and I will find out for Roanoke City, Roanoke County.
This is a very complicated issue. For all of the school systems, how many here would like to have their children being videotaped or recorded with a phone camera by other students and having them send the video clips elsewhere? Raise your hand. You would be okay with that? Well, no, I'm not going with a specific incident. What I'm talking about is there is an issue about privacy. And in the city of Salem, the policy is that students are not allowed to use their video cameras within the classroom because it violates the privacy of the other students.
I think the question, though, was more, can the school system have a camera in the classroom?
The school system does not have a camera in each of the classrooms. What they do have are cameras, at least in the city of Salem, that are strategically located so that the classrooms themselves are less likely to be an area for any kind of aggressive behaviors. When you look at most of the structures that we call school buildings, many of them were built in the 70s, and they were not designed to closely monitor. They were designed for the functional purposes of that time, but they did not keep pace with what started in the 90s with the school shootings. Once the school shootings began, it became very important for school systems to begin examining the structural layouts of their buildings and attempt to reduce those quiet, dark, isolated areas where aggressive behavior most typically occurred. At least in the city of Salem, we have tried to reduce as many of those risk locations as is humanly possible. And again, it is a humanly possible goal that we're working towards.
All right, thank you. And if you wouldn't mind just sort of staying there, Dr. Mike, I did it better that time. Dr. Mike, just for a moment. Brent, would you mind fielding that for Roanoke County? The cameras in classrooms. You were at Glenver Middle. Cameras owned by the school system, are they in the classrooms at Roanoke County? Okay. And do you know if that's across the board, or are you just speaking for Glenver Middle? Okay. Not cameras inside the classroom. Okay, thank you. Does that answer your question? Okay. All right, thank you so much. All right, for...
Talking about having a camera in strategic places, how often are these monitored? Because perhaps it was received about an incident that happened in one of the Salem schools. The child was bullied for I think near close to 30 minutes, and no one ever came to his aid. Now, it appears to me, what's the point in having these cameras if they're not being monitored?
Let me reiterate the question so everybody can hear. The question is, if cameras are in place in the hallway, an incident happens over especially a longer period of time, are these cameras reviewed periodically or only when there's an incident and a red flag goes up and then?
Curtis Hicks?
Yeah.
I would rather you, well, you're loud. See?
That aren't routinely supervised like all the time by teachers. So as Dr. Mike said, classrooms, there's always an adult in the classroom, so even if something does happen, usually an adult is there to intervene very quickly. So cameras are in the common spaces, but as you can imagine, if there are 30 cameras in a school building, the hours of videotape that's creating every day. If you take 30 cameras and you multiply that by 6 hours a day, you're up to 180 hours of video. That's more than 4 40-hour work weeks created in one day. So no, cameras are not, and I think I speak for Roanoke County. I used to be in Roanoke County. I've never tried to work in Roanoke City, but in general, the camera footage is used to support when a student makes a claim that something happened. It's used as evidence, but no, we don't have the manpower to monitor 30 cameras a day. I mean, basically, you would need someone sitting in front of 30 monitors practically, watching footage all day long to monitor every camera. I also want to add that we currently have, and I believe most of the other jurisdictions do as well, cameras on our buses, because we do realize that buses present an area that is very difficult for a driver trying to watch the road to keep track of what's going on with the bus. So we do know that buses are a place where some of these behaviors do occur, so we now have at least 2 cameras on buses. They do pick up audio. So our bus drivers, and I think our system data would bear out, that we've had significantly fewer incidents on buses than we installed them. So the cameras are there at the turn. We would want them to hopefully realize that they're being videotaped. They're going to be less likely to do something that they're not supposed to do. No, that's not 100% of the time. I think you made a good point. I have 3 kids of my own. I don't think any one of us in here could raise your hand and say that your child has never broken the rules, never been home. None of us, I don't think anyone would raise their hand. If I ask you if your child has never broken a rule at home, I think all of us would keep our hands down. And the same goes for school. We have 4,000, close to 4,000 students in the city of Salem, 350 teachers. That's hundreds of thousands of interactions with people. Hundreds of thousands. And by and large, most of those are very positive. And we try to handle the ones that are negative as quickly and swiftly and justly as we can. Typically, the issue you run into there is, you have a victim, and that victim is hurt, and those parents are very hurt because their child's hurt. There's nothing more here and I get that. That's real at home. But then you've also got a perpetrator whose parents are advocating for them. So what we have to do, and I feel like school division employees, we love being the flower of the business, we love what we do. You know, we
I thought you did it for the high pay.
exactly. That's exactly. So we love kids and we want to get it right. Now, do we always get it right? Sure. We don't. We occasionally make mistakes, and we try to improve upon that all the time. We continue to review policies and procedures and tweak those to try to make them better. But we're not going to do it right all the time. But back to the question about cameras, we do have the conversation. We now have on the bus. They're there more to deter. We feel like there's no way to actively monitor those daily because of just the sheer volume of footage it creates. The footage is archived for up to 2 weeks, I believe, and we can always go back and review that anytime we want.
Are there any plans to upgrade and increase the amount of video cameras in Salem City Schools?
Every year we apply for money to a state grant, and that's exactly what we've done with that money for the last 3 or 4 years. Is we've added cameras in all of our schools, and anytime we're aware of an area that's not supposed to be monitored or not able to be monitored with current cameras, we try to.
All right,
But
thank you.
I'll also go, I am, in addition to being on the school board, I am a clinical psychologist here in the Roanoke Valley. I am the person who tends to work with those individuals who have been either the victim of bullying or the perpetrator of bullying. From the 70s on, we've had research that clearly indicated one factor that can greatly reduce all sorts of inappropriate behaviors. It was done in Oregon. The research is very solid. It has never been disproven. It has been repeatedly demonstrated that the one factor that reduces all sorts of inappropriate behaviors, in particular by youth, but I'll also argue, hopefully, with adults, although sometimes I don't get the sense that we pay attention to it as much, is people observing kids' behaviors. If you observe your own child, if you observe some other child, it is your responsibility. It is our responsibility as a community. We are here. I am a servant leader. My job, whether it be as a clinical psychologist or a school board member, is to be a leader in this community, but to serve you and your children. I have 3 of my own who went through Salem City Schools. I had to monitor them and their peers because my mom and her neighbors growing up taught me one thing. If I went down the street and Mrs. Smith saw me doing something wrong, Mrs. Smith didn't do anything but get in touch with my mom and say, Mrs. Chiglinski, who by the way turned 97 this weekend, Mrs. Chiglinski, Michael was doing such and such, and I wanted to let you know. And my mom, Tom, are they clapping that I was doing something wrong or that?
No, I think it's because you pronounced your name right.
Well, I did. But it's the observation of our children along with other children, and then taking that and sharing that with people. In this day and age, I must be honest with you. As a clinical psychologist, I am worried about the parents and how they feel about themselves as much as about the kids. And I will add one thing to what Tom was talking about earlier. Verizon loves me. Can I ask all mothers in here to raise your hands? Everyone who's a mother, raise your hands. When your child was born, did your child come into this world with one of these in their hands? Children need food, they need water, they need clothing, they need shelter, they need education, they need love, they need a community to wrap around themselves until their brains can develop sufficiently that they can put a stop to some things before they open their mouths or move their hands and feet. That's our job. We're their brains. But mothers, if your child did not have one of these when they came out of the womb, there's really no, I have, Tom, you did research, I'm glad. I did research. There are no recorded deaths of children who have not had a cell phone in their hands. No child has died from a loss of a cell phone or not having one. We all talk about safety. Quite honestly, these are now potentially more dangerous to our youth than not having one. In a school system, we have more video cameras, we have more technology, we have more people monitoring for safety than ever before because we're all on high alert. This is not required.
Dr. Mike, thank you so much. Yes, ma'am.
My question is this: I was told that the child that was hurt arrived at school early that morning. And my question is this: those school doors evidently are open at 7 in the morning. Staff does not have to arrive that early. Teachers evidently don't arrive till 7:40, whatever time they're supposed to arrive. You take a group of children, middle-aged school children, and you allow them to walk into a building unsupervised.
I can frame your question and get it answered. So the question is, are there doors open before the majority of teachers and administrators are there on at a building? And if so, I guess what do we do with that, and does that present a problem? So again, I will put this question to Salem, because you guys are the only ones.
So I'll answer that. At the high school, we do have kids who get there as early as 7 o'clock on buses, so we do have the doors open to receive those students. And we have 4 teachers on duty to supervise the building. At the middle school doesn't start until about 8:25 or 8:30 in the morning. And our policy, or it's not really a policy, our procedure in the student code of conduct is that no students are to be on grounds before 7:30. Now, over time, when you've got students standing outside at 7 a.m., their parents drop them off as early as 6:50 in the morning, 7 a.m. in the morning, and they're standing outside in the rain, they're standing outside in sub-freezing temperatures. Over time, we have become accustomed to letting those students into the building. We do have someone that arrives every day at 7:15 to supervise the gymnasium, and all our students are supposed to be in the gymnasium until at least 8:15 or 8:20, unless they have no somewhere else. So really, because of trying to accommodate parents' needs, we probably were opening our doors earlier than we should. We said review that practice. We only have one door open in the mornings for students to enter off the back of the building, the buses. One door open at the drop-off line. Still, students are supposed to be there until 7:30. We do have someone monitoring that entrance to make sure that they're going to the gymnasium, and then an administrator comes down and supervises that area so that that's before we can go back.
All right, thank you so much. Let me move on to others, and then if we have time, I'll certainly. All right, that sounds great. Yes, sir. All right, so the question is, if a child's being bullied and they report that to somebody in the school that they're supposed to, a guidance counselor, an administrator, etc., is the parent of that victim allowed to be engaged and involved and have access to that information in that investigation? Is that your question? No. So does that happen right away? So if I, as a victim, say I'm being bullied to my guidance counselor, you're asking if that guidance counselor is going to call the parents? Okay. So you want to know the school's policy in contacting the parents, all right?
I don't think there's no written policy that says that a school administrator or counselor is going to contact the parent every time. Like it doesn't say word for word, you must contact the student's parents. But I would say in most cases, it really depends on the circumstances of what the child reports and how the administrator or the counselor determines is the best way to deal with that. And I would say in most cases, they would reach out to the parents. I mean, in my experience of 20 years, I would say, I was a school principal, I was an assistant principal, and every time I had a student in the office, no, I didn't contact the parent. A lot of that fell to, what the situation was, how severe it was, whether I felt like the parent needed to get involved, whether I felt like the student itself would report the situation to the parent. So a lot of that depends on the age of the child, too. I think once children start to get older, a lot of times we start to work with them to try to work through their problems, but obviously at younger ages, I would think that the level of contact with parents would be high.
All right. Yes.
The law has actually changed. So I've read me and I recommend a lot of y'all in Richmond. Several years ago, we passed a law that required the state board to develop anti-bullying policies and required every school system to adopt what all school systems did. There wasn't a specific requirement for parental notification in there. So we actually passed a law this year that requires parental notification of the parents of all children on any side of a bullying event within 5 days of a report to the school.
That's awesome. Hi.
Own policy consistent with that. The specific requirement has to fall to the principal, not the guidance counselor. So the hierarchy is, there's actually a state definition. You mentioned the CDC definition of bullying. That's been a very hard thing to do, to define that. There's a state definition of bullying. So the reason there's a 5-day window is once there's a first report of an event, the school then essentially has 5 days to investigate whether the definition of bullying has been met. That final determination would be by the principal in conjunction with the school board. The principal then has an obligation for the 5 days.
Thank you so much. That answered it very thoroughly, I believe. Let me get back to that. Just open up for anybody else, and then we can do multiples. Anybody? Yes. Again, reinforcing that statistic that I gave, that 50% of cases, if we had peer intervention. So your question then is, to sort of frame this up, is what systems are in place to train peers on how to be that intercessor for a victim? All right? I'm going to open that up to any of our guests here today if they'd want to answer that. I know we have law enforcement here in schools, like resource officers, and Salem is here. Whoever wants to. Dr. Mike, you talk more than I do.
I do, but that's because I have a longer last name. In Salem City schools, and I can only do Salem City, starting at the elementary school levels, we have the DARE officers who are part of the school curriculum, and they do a lot of work with the kids on bully prevention and that kind of stuff. And it starts at that level. At the middle school, we have Rachel's Challenge, where we incorporate a lot of youth in getting involved. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Rachel's Challenge is a program that was developed by a survivor of the Columbine shooting, who felt like if people would have intervened, students would have intervened, they could have brought down the amount of bullying that went on prior to that incident. And then at the high school level, of course, once you've been setting the stage in elementary and middle school, the hope is that developmentally the young people at the high school level are able to take a step forward with it. Right. Again, they do because they have matured cognitively, so it's a little bit easier, but that doesn't always guarantee that they know how best to solve problems.
Dr. Mike, can I narrow you in a little bit better than that? Because I'm thinking that's a little bit generic. And here's what, and I'm just sort of plain. Well, her specific question was, is there a specific program in place that empowers and trains, let me get this thought out of my head, that empowers and trains peers on how to respond to a bullying incident and be an intercessor?
Actually, I'm sorry, Mr. Bemis from Blue Ridge Behavioral Health is here, and I believe that you and Ms. Hands and so forth have
Nancy
Hands have.
A good Samaritan kind of a rule. And to be honest with you, I would like to extend that so that the schools have an expectation for those that are witnessing. For me, there ought to be a consequence if someone's standing around watching and not reporting.
What would be?
You better buy me dinner if you're going to point your finger at me.
What would be the consequence for those who are observed if there's a group of
that's open for discussion, isn't it?
Which is really, I think, part of what I believe is our responsibility. I appreciate this forum to begin a dialogue with folks.
Thank you.
This is an opportunity for all of us, not just to take the information tonight, go home, go, hey, I know a little bit more about bullying, but actually, one of the things that I think you do have a responsibility to your communities is to be a person who speaks up. But when you speak up, to do so constructively, to do so proactively if possible, to do so respectfully, mutually respectful of those who are trying to put together things to help solve problems. Again, it goes back to the common good. If we don't work together and hear your voice, we won't know.
And again, I agree 100%. I agree that we need to be an advocate in peace to affect change. But let me just say, for every school district and for everybody that is influential with our students, as peaceful as I'm willing to be, as civil as I'm willing to be, I want everyone to know that we want change and we're not going away. It's not going to end tonight. I saw it, yes. Let me get back to you just so we can get some new ones, but I will if there's... Yes, ma'am. The yellow shirt, sunglasses. That's such a broad, ambiguous question. Yeah. Let me restate that the best I can. Thank you for speaking up. But essentially, we're concerned, because I'm with you, we're concerned that the consequence doesn't meet the crime in some cases. Is that right? Sometimes the consequence... Right. And again, that is the great thing about our country. We can continue to meet, we continue to talk, and we can make recommendations and bring these things to the people that need to hear them. So that's all. I'm very thankful for this dialogue. It's been long needed. It's been long needed. Another question. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I have a cousin. She's a school teacher in Northern Virginia. Lovely lady, has a master's degree from Clemson University. She loves teaching. What she's telling me and what I see myself is that she has 300 students throughout her day. She's a middle school teacher. So she may want to address some bullying issues that are going on in the classroom, but she simply is just wore out. She doesn't have time, and to think that she's going to email the guidance counselor for 4 or 5 students in the class. The last time she sent them down there, they didn't do anything about it. They just sent them back to her. So my question would be, what are we doing to support the teachers in our commitment?
Okay.
We're going to take them.
All right. Let me...
There's a great book out there I would encourage all to read it. It's called Schools Can't Do It Alone. And what you're alluding to, there's a problem of just the various government mandates from the community So I agree. And that's why I'm glad to be here, and I have no problem with dialogue, and there have been some good suggestions here that we'll take back and look at. But the bottom line is, these recent incidents, hopefully for every one of you here, has been a discussion starter for you at home today. And just today, on the way home from my son, picked my son up from high school, we had a conversation about something that was going on in school, and he had a question about how the administrator handled it. My answer was, I would imagine that the administrator handled that way because he felt that students were using that to ridicule other students. And then he talked about how he can respond to that. And what you're talking about the bystander issue. If you start to look at the research, the percentage of students who are bullied is very small. The percentage of students who are bullied is fairly small, roughly 25%, I think.
Close to 40, but
That leaves you at least 50% of students who are bystanders that have the power
right. Well, according to statistics, 70% have witnessed bullying, but only 37 of those percent are actually speaking out about it and reporting.
37% of students who are bullied.
Correct, are reporting. Right.
So I agree we can probably do a better job training students who are bystanders. I know that it's part of our DARE curriculum. I also know that it's part of our guidance curriculum. I would venture to say that most of your students, if you're at home, if you ask them, if you saw a kid bullying another kid, what would you do? Most of them would have a reasonable response. But unfortunately, sometimes there's a gap between what we know we should do and what we do.
And we get all that. We just need to figure out how to change all that. Sir.
I'm just wondering what psychological resources are available to students who, even if they could claim to be bullied and haven't met that threshold for the definition. Are there psychological resources like Dr. Chiggy,
So what resources are available to kids that are experiencing trauma from bullying that are available in our schools? Right? Anybody want to answer that? That's Tom McCracken. Hi, nice to meet you. Yes, sir.
Psychological resources within the community, you certainly have within the school system. The best place to start out with is the guidance counselor. I'm sorry?
She's just supporting you. That's a Baptist way of clapping.
But outside of the school system, there are public mental health facilities, such as Blue Ridge Behavioral Health. There is Intercept. There is Stanley Services.
Does the school offer a sheet of resources available, or is it incumbent upon parents to try to figure out where to go and what to do?
I believe if you went to a guidance counselor or spoke to a building administrator, they would have a list of resources that are available.
Okay, thank you.
But my point is, if a student has reported bullying, even if they haven't met that threshold for technically being bullied by the law,
Yeah, the resources are available to them.
without being asked for,
I am a mental health professional. I would tell you that absolutely it should be offered at the drop of a hat, but then we go back to the discussion about number of teachers and all that's expected of them. Guidance counselor. Yes, I would support all kids getting the support within the school system.
We need to move on to another question. Yes, ma'am.
Because they moved my son with a through and through right clavicle break, which he still carries to this day, physically, mentally, and emotionally. So if somebody could answer that for me, I'd greatly appreciate it.
Anybody want to take a shot at that? Okay.
May I say one more thing? When I spoke to Dr. Jones, when I took
Let's not mention any names. That's okay. That's okay. And don't mention any schools.
I spoke to the principal of the school when he called me when we were speaking. He told me that he was very sorry that this had happened to my son, but quote unquote, that he was an easy target because he was small. I don't care if they are 62 pounds or if they're 162 pounds.
You are absolutely preaching to the choir. We have established that we have a huge problem.
And this is what I said to him. And I'm saying to everybody here, and I've been...
We've got to hurry. We've got to hurry.
Enough is enough.
I agree.
Now,
I agree. I agree.
you stop the bullying, you stop the pain.
Right. We're good. All right. By a show of hands, can I extend this to 8:15? By a show of hands, if you agree with extending this to 8:15. Conditionally that we have to stop at 8:15. We can meet again, but we have to stop at 8:15 tonight. Yes, ma'am.
This is going on in all places. We are not in Salem, from bottom to top. And it's going on everywhere. I've had lots of calls. He speaks of Rachel's challenge and dare. Those are outdated
Okay.
for what's going on in our society right now.
Okay.
In our schools. It's very outdated. There's cyberbullying, there's
Social media.
There's social media.
What's your question?
What do we do to change?
Okay. Well, I can ask that. That's an easy question. So the question is, if the community feels that some of these programs and initiatives that were once beneficial and working are now outdated culturally, are there any plans within the school districts themselves to reevaluate, to reimplement, to adjust and address that? Is that a good question? All right. Oh, good. So what else can we do?
But what do we do as parents? Where do we start with our legislation?
Right here. Believe me, this is not just a meeting that's going to accomplish nothing. We're not going away. We're engaging now. Look what we have here. So we've taken a great step. We've taken a step. Let me get that question answered. I'll address that before we close. I will address that. Sheriff Eric Orange, glad you joined us tonight. It's good to see you. All right. So, and we'll address that. Yeah, I got a lot over everywhere. I'm trying to find some folks that haven't had an opportunity yet. Go ahead.
Okay, my nephew goes to high school. He's been bullied so much to the point where he started cutting on himself. When is enough? He's reported it to the school board. They have done nothing. We'll take care of it. He goes back to school. The same bullies are there doing the same thing over and over. When is it going to stop?
Number one, I'm very sorry that you're going through this. I really am. I'm sorry that all of you are going through what we're going through. Let me just say, part of the reason that I called this meeting, and we've accomplished that, is certainly to bring attention and awareness to this issue, but for someone like you to look around and see you're not alone through this. You are absolutely not alone. We're here for you, and we're going to make this better. I assure you, this is not going away. And I am promising you, I'm going to commit to this. I promise all of you I will commit to this. We will certainly make a difference.
When kids get bullied enough, and they continue to get bullied, they're going to start acting out at school. And then they turn around and look at you like there's a problem now, so they need to get counseling or medical attention.
It's definitely a distraction to education.
Get your own. They say you got to go to our school doctor. They kicked him out of school because we didn't go to their doctor.
What? Give me a question. You're just upset. Yeah, I get you.
Why aren't they doing enough to help children that are being bullied instead of turning it on them?
Because up to now, we have not been resourced enough. We have not kept current with the shifts in technology in our culture, and we do have outdated systems and structures in place. Up till now, we have people in this very room that can change that. So we've already brought attention to it, and I do have a plan after we meet. White. Why did I say yellow? She's wearing white, and I said yellow. I'm sorry. Go ahead. What's your question? I have seen that as a common thread throughout the school conduct. There's a difference between theoretically and practically, right? You could put it in a policy. That doesn't mean it's going to be enforced. And it doesn't mean there's a definition. What does zero tolerance mean? So let me just ask for the city of Salem, does your rule of conduct and your policy actually have those words, zero tolerance for bullying?
I don't believe it does.
Okay.
If bullying exists and it's investigated through discipline.
Do you have a certain set of guidelines and standards when it comes to discipline, or is it a case-by-case basis? And is there written policy to break that down?
There's a written policy on bullying in general, and then a whole litany of discipline
Options that are available? Is that every school, building administrator for every school, do they have liberty? Okay, thank you. Yes, ma'am. We're getting a few of those. Not up until now. Not up until now. I don't mean to sound flippant. I really don't, but I really believe that we're going to affect change. I really believe this is a big enough crowd, a big enough group, with enough influential decision makers in this very room that we have started something that's not going to go away. Yes, sir. I'm up. I'm up. Sounds good. Thank you. Let me get back to you. Yes, sir.
Concerning, I think the issue came up a while ago about
You speak up just a little bit. All right.
the fact that a student standing around sees something happen, they speak up. The person that's doing the bullying or who thinks they're the big shot, at a later point, is going to target that.
There is research that has addressed that. And what his question is, I'm advocating that we have peer interaction and involvement, being intercessors and certainly being trained to do that stops these incidences by 50%. There is research that shows if it's not handled correctly and followed through, and that's why I brought that out, then yes, it could be more detrimental than helpful, because now you have everybody upset with that kid for being a tattletale, not being a productive hero of that community. But again, everything is so tied in. If we follow through and we continue to engage, that's when that statistic can be realized. Yes, ma'am, do you have a question?
Yeah, I have siblings that are all through elementary school, middle school, and the high school. At my current employer, we have this thing called a whistleblower hotline.
Whistleblower hotline.
I just figured, could there be some kind of portal or a box where these kids can put in if they're being bullied, or if there's someone that they're seeing constantly bullying people, they can submit it anonymously or anything to at least have it investigated.
All right, Dr. Mike is jumping at the bit here.
Salem City did have a program where students could go online and anonymously report any kind of negative.
Yeah, let me repeat the question. There was a whistleblower program somewhere else, and that's sort of addressing what we've been talking about, trying to get peers involved and calling in. And again, tattletale is not a great term. That's not what this is. This is just being a productive member of a society and a community. So is there a pathway or something in place, structure, system in place, that could facilitate somebody saying, yes, this is what's going on, making administration aware that there's a problem? Anonymous or...
Salem had a way for students to report anonymously if there were incidents of bullying or other behavior, such as they were aware that somebody else might be harming themselves, doing self-injury, or talking about suicide. And it was available, and over the course of 3 years, there was one student who did anything. Now, I'm fine with that one student doing something, but it was not used by the students for the very issue that I think Tom has already addressed, which is the passivity of those around situations. We do that as adults as much as kids do it with other kids. Adults don't report to the police when they sense something is going on until something bad happens. We tend to hold back.
Well, and you thank you, Doctor. You completely bypass that tattletale aspect when you're just dealing with a peer to a peer saying, dude, don't do that. That's enough. Back off. That peer pressure changes, and that's where that 50%. How long ago was that program in effect? How long ago? Again, I think we can all agree, no matter where a school district is and the great things that we're doing, we can always do better. And I think that's kind of what we're looking at. You had something, question?
So where did this program thing go that got resolved?
He said it wasn't really utilized, so it
Can we make it can we bring it back to help parents and students?
hold on one second. Okay, your question? Well, that's certainly an option. It's certainly an option. Yeah, well, let's go to somebody who hasn't spoken yet. Blue in the back. You're right. Well, elementary school and middle school is predominantly where bullying is taking place. Absolutely. Thank you. All right. Thank you so much. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Loud and proud your question. No campaigning here. Let's just get down to the question.
What I seem to be hearing a lot is from this lady here, from some over here, is a frustration sometimes with administration not taking sufficient steps forward when cases do happen. And so my question would be, what are the resources available to parents, not necessarily just to children, who are experiencing this bullying happening for child, or their child is being bullied, if they don't feel like administration.
Okay, so let me break this down and take the steps through it. So as a parent of a child being bullied, you have your child go to the guidance counselor, you get engaged and involved, the counselor brings it to administration, you feel administration has dropped the ball, they're putting this thing under the carpet. What is your next step? Is that the question? All right. Salem, what's your next step?
Well, we have two policies that are used in this regard. There's a third-party complaint against an employee, so you can voice your complaint against the employee if you felt like they were.
Where do they do that specifically?
If you go online to our website, you go to the school board and look up. If you were to call anybody in the central office, they can voice the direction of that policy. But all you have to do is go to our policy manual online. All our policy manuals up say the same. Roanoke City, Roanoke County, policy manuals online. So if you went there, we have a specific policy called, I think it's GDLA, third-party complaint against the school business employees. So that'd be one route to go. And then the second thing we have is bullying is a form of harassment. I think we would all agree on that. So we have policies that are very specific about how we handle harassment.
And there are laws that deal with harassment.
So the second thing you can do is use policies and basically make a report of harassment, which has a much higher threshold or higher level of investigation. It would have to be investigated by a central office employee to determine if the administrator handles the situation appropriately. So we conduct those, and we can even, in cases, bring in a third party to conduct those.
Yeah, and I think that goes to your follow-up part of the policy.
We are at time. We are at time. So we're not going to be able to, I'm sorry, I really am. But I promise we're going to have more. I promise we're going to have more. I assure you, we will have more. And I will make myself available tonight after we are dismissed. If you have any questions, need direction, I will find an answer for you. You just come to me. We'll go right to my office, and I'll be here as long as you want. I did, before we close, want to offer to our special speakers, if there's anybody here tonight that would like to say anything, now is your time. I'll go over here first. Any last? All right, sounds good. Anybody over here? We're all good. This time I'm going to ask Pastor Jim Asbury, who again, a pastor, a founder of Exalted Church and chaplain with the Roanoke City Police Department, if you'll come up front here and close us in a word of prayer. And while he's coming forward, again, that is a very sincere statement that I am not done with this. I am very passionate about education, very passionate about children. So I'm absolutely committing to you guys. We will do this again. I guess my question, I don't want it to just be a question and answer period. I want us to have some direction, formulate something together collectively. I'd like some time to review the policies that are locally. I'd like some time to invite and get different places, Botetourt, Bedford, other districts involved. I would again like to offer Roanoke City and Roanoke County an opportunity to come and be represented. I would like some more time to do some more research so that we can make some recommendations and know exactly what to do to affect this change. Would 1 month from now be okay? Raise your hand if you'd be okay in coming back in 1 month. All right, I will do everything I need to do, get all the research done. Any questions you have that you want answered between now and next time, you email those to me and I'll make sure they get to the right people and answered correctly, and I'll have some direction. In the meantime, I'll be meeting with the different people in our districts and our school systems, hopefully some school boards, and hopefully some folks even in Richmond, and have influence there that we can get the ball rolling on making some change. Thank you all so very much for being here. Pastor, thank you.
Let's pray. Father, we come to you tonight, and I think we
call a meeting next month. Thank you all so very much for your patience.
Salem City did have a program where students could go online and anonymously report and kind of negative.
Yeah, let me repeat the question. There were a whistleblower program somewhere else, and that's sort of addressing what we've been talking about, trying to get peers involved and calling in. And again, tattletale is not a great term. That's not what this is. This is just being a productive member of a society and a community. So is there a pathway or something in place, structure system in place, that could facilitate somebody saying, yes, this is what's going on, making administration aware that there's a problem? Anonymous or...
Salem had a way for students to report anonymously if there were incidents of bullying or other behaviors, such as they were aware that somebody else might be harming themselves, doing self-injury, or talking about suicide. And it was available, and over the course of 3 years, there was one student who did anything. Now, I'm fine with that one student doing something, but it was not used by the students for the very issue that I think Tom has already addressed, which is the passivity of those around situations. We do that as adults as much as kids do it with other kids. Adults don't report to the police when they sense something is going on until something bad happens. We tend to hold back.
Well, and you thank you, Doctor. You completely bypass that tattletale aspect when you're just dealing with a peer to a peer saying, dude, don't do that. That's enough. Back off. That peer pressure changes, and that's where that 50%. How long ago was that program in effect? How long ago? Again, I think we can all agree, and no matter where a school district is and the great things that we're doing, we can always do better. And I think that's kind of what we're looking at. You had something? Question?
So where did this program thing go that got resolved?
He said it wasn't really utilized, so it
Can we make it used to bring it back to help parents and students?
Hold on one second. Okay. Your question? Well, that's certainly an option. It's certainly an option. Yeah. Well, let's go to somebody who hasn't spoken yet. Blue in the back. You're right. Well, elementary school and middle school is predominantly where bullying is taking place. Absolutely. Thank you. All right. Thank you so much. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Loud and proud, your question. No campaigning here. Let's just get down to the question.
What I seem to be hearing a lot is from this lady here and from someone over here is a frustration sometimes with administration not taking sufficient steps forward when cases do happen. And so my question would be, what are the resources available to parents, not necessarily just to children who are experiencing this bullying happening to their child, or their child is being bullied, if they don't feel like administration.
Okay, so let me break this down and take the steps through it. So as a parent of a child being bullied, you have your child go to the guidance counselor, you get engaged and involved, the counselor brings it to administration, you feel administration has dropped the ball, they're putting this thing under the carpet. What is your next step? Is that the question? All right. Salem, what's your next step? Where do they do that specifically?
If you go online to our website, you go to the school board and look up. If you were to call anybody in the central office, they can point you in the direction of that policy. But all you have to do is go to our policy manual online. All our policy manuals, I would say the same is true for Roanoke City, Roanoke County. Policy manuals are online. So if you went there, we have a specific policy called, I think it's GDLA, third-party complaint with the school business employees. So that'd be one route. And then the second thing we have is bullying is a form of harassment. I mean, we all agree on that. So we have policies that are very specific about how we handle harassment.
And there are laws that deal with harassment.
So the second thing you can do is use the policy and basically make a report of harassment, which has a much higher threshold or higher level of investigation
We are at time. We are at time. So we're not going to be able to, I'm sorry, I really am. But I promise we're going to have more. I promise we're going to have more. I assure you, we will have more. And I will make myself available tonight after we are dismissed. If you have any questions, need direction, I will find an answer for you. You just come to me. We'll go right to my office, and I'll be here as long as you want. I did, before we close, want to offer to our special speakers, if there's anybody here tonight that would like to say anything, now is your time. I'll go over here first. Any last? All right, sounds good. Anybody over here? We're all good. This time I'm going to ask Pastor Jim Asbury, who again, pastor, founder of Exalted Church and chaplain with the Roanoke City Police Department, if you'll come up front here and close us in a word of prayer. And while he's coming forward, again, that is a very sincere statement that I am not done with this. I am very passionate about education, very passionate about children. So I'm absolutely committing to you guys. We will do this again. I guess my question, I don't want it to just be a question and answer period. I want us to have some direction, formulate something together collectively. I'd like some time to review the policies that are locally. I'd like some time to invite and get different places, Botetourt, Bedford, other districts involved. I would again like to offer Roanoke City and Roanoke County an opportunity to come and be represented. I would like some more time to do some more research so that we can make some recommendations and know exactly what to do to affect this change. Would 1 month from now be okay? Raise your hand if you'd be okay in coming back in 1 month. All right, I will do everything I need to do, get all the research done. Any questions you have that you want answered between now and next time, you email those to me, and I'll make sure they get to the right people and answered correctly. And I'll have some direction. In the meantime, I'll be meeting with the different people in our districts and our school systems, hopefully some school boards, and hopefully some folks even in Richmond, and have influence there that we can get the ball rolling and making some change. Thank you all so very much for being here. Pastor, thank you.
Let us pray. Father, we come to you tonight, and I thank you for what we've gathered in this place. I recognize, Lord, there are many emotions. Many people in this room have been affected by bullying. Thank you for each of the administrators and leaders who are representatives that come out tonight and take questions, try to give the best answers they could. The moms and the dads and grandparents who have come out tonight and concern for their children and grandchildren. So, Father, we recognize that we can't change the world overnight. Lord, we have time to take a step to move in the right direction, change our community. So, Lord, I just pray that you would continue to help us, Lord, to come together and be united. We need one another. So, Lord, I pray for leaders tonight who might be encouraged by taking this very first step, and that you might continue to direct their path and keep them straight as we move forward to make a difference so that our kids can feel safe, that we can feel good about when they are within the school system during the day, during the week, that they are in safe places. So we love you tonight, Lord, and thank you for this time.
We'll call a meeting next month. Thank you all so very much for your patience.